everyone. Episode 45 of the Potomac RPG Podcast. I'm sure that time I murdered the blacksmith won't come back to haunt me.
Welcome one and all to the Potomac RPG Podcast, your source for old news, tired conversation, and mediocre advice for all of your favorite tabletop role-playing games. I'm your host and childhood bully that picked on the wrong person, Adam.
I'm your character who saw their parents die gruesomely in front of her, Sarah.
And I'm your skeleton in the closet, Ben.
Thank you so much for being on the show, guys. Great to have you on. In terms of updates, we had our session last night in Avernus, and it was a mournful session because Tom's character, Andreas, is no longer with us. This actually happened 2 Saturdays ago. But just kind of want to touch base with you guys. This is our first seemingly permadeath that we've Ben, obviously your character died but now is back, but how are you guys feeling about a character being gone?
It's tough. This was one of the most emotional and just really tense now actually 2 separate nights of D&D when we actually had the death that night. We did everything we could possibly think of to prevent it.
Just so our listeners know, basically what happened is Tom's character, who's a cleric, was basically saving our asses left and right. Just healing and taking care. A lot of us almost died that night, and at the very end, a devil basically grappled him and jumped off a bridge. And despite my character casting Featherfall to slow his descent and us throwing a rope, he missed the rope. And the last image that we have of Andreas is him being grappled by this devil, slowly floating down into the lower depths of Avernus. So so
tragic,
just tragic death. I mean, it's just horrible. And really kind of hard to come to terms with it, huh?
Yeah. It was like I was not there that evening for our listeners, but Steve came and he told me about it afterward, and the way he described it, it was so cinematic, and I'm like, of all the nights I had to miss, this was the night. I can tell you my character's reeling though from the emotional blowback of losing someone.
Yeah, and we all are. I'm noticing some personality shifts from last night's session after having a character death. People are reacting a little bit differently, but you specifically, Sarah, your character's taking a bit of a dark turn. Now,
hang on. It's only look. Okay, it just depends on which side you're on. Okay,
sure.
She decided to make a deal with the Shield of Gargoth to be stronger so she can keep everyone alive. She feels really personally guilty that we lost someone. Like, she's a protector. She's the fighter. Like, she's got to be stronger so you guys can survive. So she's kind of like having that Thor moment. Except she's not playing the PS4 yet.
Well, on the plus side, I'm sure there'll be no negative consequences from your actions.
For making a pact with Gargoth, the 10th Lord of Hell, and Dark Lord of Vengeance, right? No problem.
Vengeance is known for nothing less than forgiveness, right?
Man. Keep them alive and then figure out the consequences later.
I foresee some other character deaths in our future after that deal. We'll see what happens. But let's get into things for today. We talk a lot about player engagement and immersion on this podcast, and that can be tough when the players don't feel connected or invested in the overall story arc. But one of the best ways for a DM to get a player hyper-focused on the game is to make it personal, specifically bringing things from the character's backstory into the game. In our group, we call them character knives. Basically, they're plot hooks within the character's backstory that the DM can use to bring conflict into the game. Now, Ben, you've had some really robust characters and backstory plot hooks. What do you think makes a really good character knife?
Yeah, you've got to have something that your character deeply cares about, so that the DM can twist that lever a little bit and get your character motivated to do something. Just having a couple names in your backstory is not that your character doesn't care about. It's not going to motivate them to change their behavior or to make any hard choices.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got a character that you are madly in love with, then you are going to make sacrifices. You are going to do everything to protect them. Something like that.
Now, I know in Avernus, Porto, your character Porto, has a relationship, and I'm sorry, I forget what their name was.
His name is Falk.
Falk, that's right. So was that part of your character knife backstory kind of thing that Steve glommed onto?
Okay. Yeah, this was definitely written into the character backstory as his love interest in Baldur's Gate, and Steve has taken that and he's twisted the knife.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm curious about. Like, whenever you had that as one of your backstory items, did you already talk about like kind of a conflict that was present within that, or did you just say, "Hey, this is Falk, and he's the love of my life"?
I mean, do you really need to? I mean, so Falk is a celestial. What Asmar is the type of character, and that implies great goodness. And Porto is chaotic, neutral, pirate type. There's a little conflict kind of inherent in that whole situation. Porto just doesn't feel like he's good enough for Falk, and is always trying to to justify being a person that is worthy of his love.
Well, and what I'm curious about is that kind of something that you made apparent, or is that something that Steve just saw that, Falk is celestial Asimar and you are a warlock, and he's like, okay, I have something here? Or did you say that, Porto, doesn't feel he's good enough?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Steve has figured that out, and I don't know how much I made perfectly clear and how much he has just kind of rolled with. But yeah.
Well, I am curious to see what happens with Falk, because last I remember he kind of stormed out in a huff, or you just disappeared. I can't remember which.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think our last words were, Porto, you're not a hero. Be careful out there. Something like that.
Oh,
well, this says so much about their feelings for each other. I want to know how this story goes.
It really does. It really does. Well, Sarah, how about you? Like, when it comes to character knives, what do you think makes a good one that the DM can really pick on?
I want to applaud Ben, because citing that it has to be something that they care about, is that it's really meaningful in that way is key. I also think that with that in mind, considering moments of potential either crisis in a character's past where they had to make a decision between two bad options, and they chose one that maybe was a cowardly choice but had some consequences that were kind of severe, stuff like that. That can come back to haunt them. But and also it doesn't always have to be bad crises. Just like we're finding out with Falk and Porto, that there's this feeling of being unworthy of this particular Aasimar that Porto has, and that's like so cool. Like I want to know more about that. But like what does that do? That gives Porto a reason to try and do certain things, or to be better, or to be worthy, right? So that's a driving point for that character. So yeah, I think that you can do crises, but definitely, absolutely, Ben hit it on the head. Make it something that the character is going to have strong feelings about.
Yeah. And I think especially unresolved things work really well. I think back to my character Milo, where, she was very into the political scene in Waterdeep. So there were a lot of like kind of things brewing, but unresolved, and things that could be pulled out if need be. And it's not so much like, oh, well, my character grew up in this town. No. Okay. What's going on in that character's life right before this adventure starts that the DM might be able to pull on and bring into a campaign? Because sometimes with our backstories we get a little too focused on what's already done rather than what's not been resolved yet. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on this week. And let's get into our questions for the week. Our first post comes from Reddit user Mochikoko, who asks, character backgrounds in pre-written adventures. How do you incorporate player backgrounds in pre-written adventures? Modules are written to be able to drop any character into them. Character backgrounds have little to do with the events that occur. What do you do to make an adventure unique, or to make adventure uniquely fit for the character? So this is a tough one here, Sarah. Those pre-written modules can be a bit paint by numbers. So how do you incorporate something from a character's background that's unrelated to the plot?
Yeah, it's actually gonna come down so much to the module as well as the characters involved. I really like how we set up the character knives, where we tend to come up with 5 to 10 character knives to give the DM, and the DM can whip it out at any time. And it also gives the DM a lot of material to work with. And they could be anyone from, I had a crush on this character and they rebuffed me, and then they went off to war and I never saw him again. And maybe that character shows up in this town. Or it could be something much harsher, where they're like, I hid under the bed while I watched my parents be slaughtered. I could have maybe saved them if I'd spoken up, but I was too much of a coward. And then they get a lead that one of the people who did the slaughtering is actually in that town, or something like that. Mm-hmm. It does take some flexibility though on the DM's part, because not every module is going to offer that perfect gateway. You might have to substitute in a character in that role. So maybe it's not the local sort of dwarf who owns the bar, but it's actually, that guy who walked out on me after rebuffing me and he owns the bar.
It's payback
and now
time. Time to smash some chairs.
Exactly. Or, stuff like that. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, Ben, what do you got?
Yeah, a lot of the characters in pre-written adventures are a little two-dimensional, and kind of inserting an extra little connection to the character. Maybe they're a sibling, or they know somebody in your backstory just through happenstance, or they've got some sort of motivation that's in parallel to yours, or your motivations, or antagonistic to your motivations. Like business dealings. We've got a character, Matt's character Decorius, he's a businessman, and Steve has integrated in. He's taken some of the characters that are from Baldur's Gate and given them like business motivations, and kind of worked towards these hooks to allow Decorius to build his mercantile reputation up, just by saying, "Oh, this this person from the Thieves Guild or whatever is willing to make some deals with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point, because sometimes the townspeople or whomever the DM has can respond to the reputation and or help build on that reputation. So like maybe if someone was really famous for a certain event, they get some attention when they come to town because of that event, and it could be negative attention, which might cause problems for them, which is ideal.
But
absolutely.
I think that character knives don't always have to be things that your DM can take away and can threaten. They could be, carrots, like your business empire, your mercantile adventures could increase your standing. Things that you can work towards, status, and etc. etc.
Yeah, no, that
Great
makes
point.
sense. Absolutely. And I think in terms of a pre-written adventure, most times there's some travel involved, getting from one place to another. And those are really good places to insert some of this kind of personal backstory kind of stuff. If you're having trouble finding a place to, bring some of that in the actual written parts, I'm trying to think. Most modules out there have you traveling from one place to another. So during that travel is a great time to pull out some of that stuff, to kind of add some bumps to the road or some good things to happen while on the road between one place and another. So those are just a few ideas, Mochikoko, that you might be able to implement some of those character backgrounds into a pre-written campaign. It is tough, but really I like Sarah and Ben's method of just pick an NPC, and that's not just some generic NPC anymore. That is someone who's important to their character in one way or another. Is a great way to handle that. So good luck out there. Would love to hear how your campaign is going.
I have news here.
And the sound of Ralphie the News Goblin can mean only one thing. It's time for Potomac RPG News. All right, so the big news of the week was the announcement of the next setting book for D&D, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Jennifer Melzer over at CBR.com has an article going over some of what's known about the new source book. Looks like we have the inclusion of some of the recent UA in here, the ability to make custom Dark Lords and domains and monsters aplenty. So, Ben, what do you think of a Ravenloft setting book coming out? Is there any interest here, or would you rather have seen something else?
No, I love it. I had long ago a module, the Isles of Dread, and it's just the visceral horror and that creeping. There's always something that is just really unsettling and potentially just horrifying right over the next the corridor, the next horizon. It's a great setting for conflict and for really testing your characters to see what happens when they are up against the greatest walls.
Yeah, well, we got one fan so far. Sarah, how about you?
Oh my gosh, I am so psyched.
I think this is number 2, right?
Steve and I were talking about like doing some Domains of Dread, and I absolutely love Gothic horror. I think it's so fun. And any of these like Penny Dreadful sort of monsters that you can explore in a more thematic setting, especially with like other players, just I don't know, it psychs me up so much. And I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite sort of Gothic monster?
Good question. Ben, do you have one on the tip of your tongue?
Well, I mean, vampires are just so fantastic and so nuanced. Yeah. Go vampires.
When before that setting, that little adventure, that the pirate adventure that I ran, vampires, I was always like, vampires, whatever. But after like incorporating that, like I see the appeal now. I'm like, yeah, they're pretty freaking cool. So I got to go vampire as well, just because of how deep they are. How about you, Sarah? What's your favorite?
I don't know if there's a dread domain for this. I love mummies, but
That's
those
right,
might
you
be.
do. That was
love
what
mummies.
you wanted. Yeah, that was your favorite.
Yeah, I love mummies, and I also love like give me a mad scientist who's creating like golems and stuff. Like I just love the Island of Dr. Moreau, like all that sort of really smart kind of trying to play God sort of exploration. I also do love vampires, don't get me wrong. I just have vampire fatigue right now because our media is so saturated with vampirism. Not that I wouldn't not that I'm complaining. Like if we have an opportunity to go up against Strahd and a slew of vampires, take me there. Yeah. They're fantastic in roleplay. But yeah, mummies and mad scientists.
I would love to see some like Egyptian type necromancers and some Egyptian god styled deities and mummies and pyramids and sand. That would be so different from our standard fantasy campaign on the Sword Coast. That would be not a glass of refreshing water, but
a breath of fresh air,
a dry heat,
yes.
A dry heat.
Well, yeah, it seems like a lot of people are looking forward to this coming out. If you are interested, it releases May 18th of this year. So check it out. Get your copy of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Ravenloft. That's the one. All right. So we're going to step out for a moment, but stay tuned. We will be right back after the break. When we were first getting this podcast together, we knew we needed some good music. And we looked into a lot of options that are out there, but we settled on Soundstripe. At soundstripe.com, they have such a wide variety of high-quality music to choose from. Every song that you hear on this podcast is from Soundstripe, and we couldn't be happier with what they have to offer. And it's not just music. They have a ton of sound effects and video stock footage as well. So if you're making a podcast or videos on YouTube or have some creative project you're working on, check out Soundstripe. They're worth a look. And right now you can use the promo code Potomac RPG, all one word, and get 10% off. That's Potomac RPG, all one word, to get 10% off your purchase. Elevate your work with the finest stock media all in one place at soundstripe.com. And with that, let's get back to the show. How about another post? This question comes from Reddit user Oxcatraz, who asks, help with character plot item. So I have this wood elf light cleric in my campaign. We're pretty early in the campaign, so personalities are still sort of getting settled in. But this guy is pretty funny. Not slapstick comedy, just witty. Now, he has in his possession a box from his mother, whom he barely knew. The box is inscribed with the sigil of Soon, the goddess of light and beauty and all that. He cannot open the box, has never been able to figure out how, and has no idea what's in it. So help me figure out what's in the box and how he might open it. Indeed, he has a little background on his mother, so why would it be in her possession anyway? All right, idea time, Sarah. What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
I think it has to be, what is the worst thing for this character that could be in that box? Oh. And that depends on the character, but it could be like, what is their worst fear, or what is their biggest temptation when it comes to playing good with their God versus maybe instincts they have that kind of pull them away from God. Could that be in there? It could be like an unfulfilled marriage contract or something that his mother made for him before she passed away. Or it could be that he has to be the subject of a ritual in soon or something because she needed to name a proxy. Like there's so many things in there, but it should definitely be something that's going to make this character come to a moment of like discomfort and make them sweat and perhaps even maybe become sort of a furnace that maybe helps them change a little bit too, or at least challenge them.
I really like that a lot. Make
maybe
them squirm.
Maybe something about their parentage. Love letters to his father.
Oh God.
His father's Strahd, you mean? And he's a light cleric?
Not a bad idea there. Yeah. Time to go warlock from light cleric to warlock, right? And I always like the idea, and it'd be such a shitty thing to do to your players, but I love the idea of this player going through all this trouble to finally get this box open, and there's like nothing in it, or it's like just a little scrap from their mom saying, "Did you really think I'd have something in it?" Yeah, exactly. But I like your ideas better. But going back a little bit, in terms of how to get it open, kind of stuff. How might someone go about opening a secret box?
What comes to mind is that. So if I put something in this box as his mother, I would create a lesson out of the steps he would have to take to open that box. So like he has to slam 5 tankards of ale or something like a lesson about, living life to its fullest. So I'd make him do a bunch of random things. Yeah.
My mom said, you don't get dessert till you slam this vodka.
Like if he's like, it was like a really cautious kid. See, it all depends on the character. If he's a really cautious kid and he's playing it safe and he's being a cleric, then maybe mom wants him to try and live a little bit outside of those rules just to make sure that's what he wants. So to open the box, he has to do like 5 different things that are really wild that he would never do. Like run naked through a town, or you know what I'm saying? Like playful stuff, but at the same time, just living free and unfettered, and then to see how he feels about that afterward.
Interesting. How about you, Ben? What do you got in terms of opening a secret box?
I'm thinking investigations into his past, and I'm thinking like there's a secret phrase or a password of some sort that or maybe one of the sayings that his mother had, something that takes some investigation and some talking to all of his mother's contacts and digging up letters and documents and all of the quest giving that's related to that. I mean, I think he should work to find out exactly. I think what I want to say is that he should kind of know what's in the box before he opens it, just based on these investigations. I think that could lead to it.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
That's really nice.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's really important here that the DM keep this player interested in the box. It's really easy to kind of forget about, if they're just walking around with this thing and, they haven't figured out what's in it. They don't have many clues to follow up on. Definitely need to keep the interest going. So from a DM's perspective, I think it's important that you drop lots of hints pretty often to keep that player engaged in that storyline. Otherwise, 6 levels would go by and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I have this box still. What do I do with that?" So I think it's important to keep that engagement present. But as to what's in it and how to open it, I mean, they're a witty character. They're supposed to be a little funny. So I think adding, they obviously got that from their mother. So adding some humor to this box, I think is a really good idea, both in what's in it and how you might open it. That's why I like your idea, Sarah, of like, doing this wild, crazy stuff, because, no one would expect that's what you need to do to open a secret box, So.
Yeah, especially if it sounds like a wild thing, but there's a witty sort of way to do it.
Yes.
And he figures it out.
Exactly. So hopefully for Oxcatraz that helps you out a little bit. Would love to hear what's in the box. That's all we really want to know, is what is in that box. So we've been talking about character knives and plot hooks and how to incorporate them into gameplay, but coming up with those knives isn't always an easy process. So let's see if we can come up with some custom character knives on the fly in our long running segment. Let's build something. Welcome to Let's Build Something, where we get to put our creativity to the test and build something live for all the world to hear. In this week's segment, we're going to build ourselves some sweet character backstory plot hooks. So, in order to make things interesting, we're going to use the website whothefuckismydndcharacter.com, since we've used that for a few other segments. Let's see what we can come up with. You guys ready?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, let's get into it. So we're going to open up that link, and then at the same time, we're going to click refresh to get our characters. You guys ready?
Yep.
3,
I am
2,
ready.
1, refresh. All right, so Sarah, what do you got?
I am an ambitious dwarf fighter from an aristocratic family who names every piece of their gear.
Okay, all right.
I love it.
Yeah. Ben, how about yours?
I have a thoughtful dragonborn monk from a notorious dungeon who is tracking down the treasure their father died trying to find.
Okay. Very nice. And I am a fearless half-orc paladin from a village without children who isn't technically alive anymore. What does that even mean? All right. So, Sarah, I know we might need a moment here to kind of collect our thoughts, but give me some initial character knives that you might be able to put in for yours.
So maybe this character is OCD. Maybe this character's family would maybe remembers like their mom, or maybe a spouse who passed away, who had trouble like keeping a plant alive until they started naming it, and then they started like staying alive, and so maybe this character is kind of adopted that practice for themselves, just to kind of like maybe keep himself or herself alive by naming all the gear, or just in honor of that memory. So those are the first couple things that come to mind. I would need a little bit more time to think
we'll
about
circle back. Ben, how about you?
So he's a dragonborn, and he's from a notorious dungeon, and he's tracking down treasure his or her father died trying to find. I like the tracking down treasure and from a dungeon, and he's a dragonborn. This seems like he's really in tune with his dragonborn dragon side of him, and is really
he's a hoarder.
He's a hoarder.
He's a hoarder.
And I think his father was a hoarder too.
I would love to see this thing where, like, what one of your character flaws is that he's just always over encumbered because he picks up everything, every single thing he can find, he picks up, and he's constantly moving at like half speed because he can't carry it all.
I would go further. I think he's got a horse and a cart that's just overflowing with stuff.
and that breeds so much good conflict, because there's going to be times where the horse can't make it, and your character has to figure out like what to keep and what not, and it's like a crisis of for the character to have to even decide, and they're constantly on the other characters about, well, can't you carry some of this, so we can get it all? And
no, we're not leaving those copper pieces.
Never. I love it. All
What
right,
about you,
so
Adam?
yeah, so I think for the fearless half-orc paladin from a village without children who isn't technically alive anymore, it kind of writes itself right off the bat. I got to figure out who killed me. Like, why am I not alive anymore? Like, that is a huge character knife. Like, I don't know why I'm dead, and I need to figure out why that is. In terms of the village without children, that has some good side plot kind of stuff, where maybe what happened was, I'm a paladin. There was some curse on that village, and I went to try to do away with the curse, and some lich or something ends up killing me, and that's kind of what I figure out along the way. And by killing this thing, I then lift the curse from the village. I also like see this thing where he forgets that other people aren't dead too.
Ooh.
And like he'll do stuff like because undead don't have to breathe, right?
That's right.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so things like, oh well, we can cross this river, no problem. And he just starts like walking into the river under the water, and like he gets to the other side and looks back and is like, why aren't you got
what's wrong?
What's wrong? That kind of thing. Also, in terms of character knives, the undead have a lot of hygiene problems, seeing as they aren't living anymore. So I can see lots of little plot devices there where how people react to this character being around, that I could kind of pluck on here and there as a DM. So definitely some decent ideas for a character on that one. Sarah, coming back to you, anything else on yours?
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe this character names their gear after people who have passed that they loved, or that they have taken the gear off of in honor, or maybe it's also to sort of because he learned that there are items out there that have egos, and he doesn't know how that happens, so he's hoping to give one of his items an ego.
I don't need to find a magic weapon. I'll make my own, damn it.
Elizabeth, his cod piece does not like to get wet, so it will not go into the river with your character.
Oh no. I also like the idea of you don't name them after people who have died, but people you wish to kill.
Yeah, there you go.
So like if someone in the group like really pisses you off, you might like name something after them. Just, you're on my list.
That's actually very dwarven. I like that.
I have a grudge. I'm writing it in metal.
Yeah, exactly. That was Let's Build Something. Good job, guys. That's hard to come up with right on the fly like that, but you did great. But that was Let's Build Something. Let's get into our last post for the week. This comes from Reddit user the Eel Emu, who says, players not pursuing their backstories. In my campaign, I'm struggling to make players chase their character backstories plot hooks. I've gotten my characters near NPCs from their backstories a couple of times now, expecting the character to which it is relevant to engage with them, but they just pass by without doing anything. For example, one of my characters is a wizard who was trained by a sick and old archmage, who sent said character to track an evil wizard the archmage knew. The players happened around a town where a demon possessed the Lord Mayor. After they beat the demon, a festival was held where they were honored, and I described how Thomas, the wizard character, notices a tall figure in the crowd, and I described the evil wizard he is chasing. And besides trying to listen in on one conversation that wizard had with one of the townsfolk, where they found the archmage was interested in the demon who possessed the mayor, after that, they just proceeded to have some fun in the festival and just left the mage without a second thought about him. I had a few other situations that were a bit similar, though less in the players' faces, where the players just didn't pay mind to the backstory hooks. Am I supposed to make every plot hook an obvious quest? Are there ways to tempt players to act? So players aren't picking up the threads and the DM's laying about here, Ben. What's a good way to handle this?
Okay, so this is something that I was kind of thinking about earlier after that question about how to give character knives to your DM. And the suggestion was to graft those character knives onto your NPCs that you've already dreamed up, or that are from the module. And I'm going to say that this is one of those instances where you can do something similar. Take that character that is in their backstory and kind of make that the facade that's on the get rid of the NPC background and put the character that's in their background onto your NPC. Replace the module, give all those plot hooks from the module to the character that is in their background, so that it's serving both purposes, as the NPC that the module wants it to be, and the character, the NPC that your players really care about.
Well, that makes sense. Sarah, how about you?
My question for the CM is, does this character care enough about this? And the reason I ask that is, what does this archmage have that would be important to this character to get, or to learn, or to avenge? Or is it just that he's just supposed to track this character down? Because that might not be motivating enough. And I think also, what are the consequences if he doesn't track them down? Like, if there's consequences,
the words right out of my mouth, Sarah. I was just going to say
sorry.
that. Like, you were sent by the wizard who taught you. You were sent by them to track down an evil wizard that they knew. And you get there and you don't do anything about it. What's the next logical thing to happen here? Well, your teacher comes by and says, "Hey, you ever find that archmage?" Yeah. Well, there's got to be consequences here. They failed to pick up the thread, and that it has to come back to haunt them, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. There should be consequences for not acting, and maybe that makes things go from okay to bad, or for that particular character. Just, you can definitely keep it interesting, but I think there's an issue here with whether or not that character cares enough, and maybe they don't care, and maybe that's in character, and maybe their mentor wants to make them care.
Or maybe the mentor, whenever they're like, "Oh, you didn't do anything. Well, I was going to give you this, but
this book that would help you with your spell list." But
exactly.
So the other thing I think you could do is, this is occurring at the same time as there's a festival full of great and exciting things that I'm sure your players were thinking about at the same time, and maybe this is just too much to process for them at the same time. You've dropped in this old character from the backstory of one person in the party, and the rest of your party might not really connect with that person from this one player's backstory. And there's all this good, fun stuff for the party to do at the same time. You got to make it a little more juicy for the rest of the players too, or make the other stuff a little bit less juicy by saying, well, you guys have 2 or 3 hours until the festival opens up. What are you guys going to do? Something
great idea
that kind of says, well, there's nothing else to do right now except interact with this plot hook. Not to lead your players by the hand, but definitely lead them by the hand.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, because you got a festival going on. A lot of the players are probably going to want to do play the games and whatever else. But I actually like that he dropped this guy in during that, because if the consequence is good enough, because that kind of teaches them that, hey, got to pay attention to what's going on. Maybe if the festival is still going on, maybe that Archmage does something at the end of the festival.
Up to no good.
Yeah. I mean, he can't be there for good reasons. So, and maybe because it was ignored, the Archmage is interested in the demon that possessed the mayor. Well, if it possessed a mayor, then a demon can possess something else, even so far as possibly the character who ignored the obvious plot hook.
Yes.
That's one way to make them pay attention to a backstory item, if you actually turn them into a demon.
Gargos would be so happy with you, Adam.
Oh, absolutely. It's ridiculous. But yeah, those are some ideas for you, the eel emu. It really is frustrating, like, whenever a player doesn't pick up on those threads. But I really think the idea of either consequence or even positive, like missed opportunities, work well. You don't necessarily have to hurt your players, but the failure to gain can really be impactful as well. So, if they missed out on something because they didn't follow that thread, and can be really good if you're feeling a little leery about actually like damaging your players' characters here and there. So, good luck out there. Would love to hear what you end up doing with this, and if that player ever did pick up that thread again and follow it, and would love to hear how you handled it. But that is going to do it for us this week. Remember, if you want to send in your questions or anything you find on the internet, you can send them to questions@PotomacRPG.com. Check out our store for merch at teespring.com/stores/PotomacRPG. If you'd like to support the Potomac RPG podcast, you can find us on coffee.com/PotomacRPG. And lastly, you can follow us at Potomac RPG on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for being on the show today, Sarah and Ben. Thank you to the rest of the Potomac RPG crew, and of course, all of our wonderful listeners out there. So, for the Potomac RPG podcast, I'm Adam.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Till next time, keep those dice rolling, keep those stories coming, and
never stop playing. Right after we finish these things, there's always something really good that you think.
I do that all the time.